Butchie found the Pat Connaughton first pitch at AmFam, and it was a little wild. A little wild, but apparently popped the gun in the 90s. Apparently, allegedly. We'll see about that. The man now who's got a generic Pat Connaughton 24 hanging up behind him right now in his studio is Ty Windisch of the Euro Step podcast. Good morning, Ty. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. I'm doing well. I don't know how the Pat Connaughton pitching thing came up, but we've got a long-running joke in our Discord about his baseball career because every time they're on a national broadcast, it's going to – did you know Aberdeen Ironbirds legend, Pat Connaughton?
So let's talk about that. Oh, my God, it sails way all the way to the backstop. There's some woman with a cell phone. It might have been his mom or his sister filming it, and she almost takes one right in the soup coolers. Good grief. Okay. So we were talking about it because NBA players, NFL players, the silly Austin Rivers, I know. And we then talked about how come it seems like basketball players can't throw, and somebody brought up Connaughton being a baseball player. And then someone brought up, the one time he had a chance to show it off, he didn't exactly shine. That's how it came up.
Picked basketball for a reason, I think.
Yeah, okay. So let's put a postmortem on the Bucks as their season is over. We talked to you a week ago when they were still alive, hanging on by a thread. We've had the Pat Beverly thing. Did you say, Butchie, that there is now the police, perhaps, getting involved in this?
I didn't say it. Josh brought it up, but yes, that was the.
Yeah,
it was just that they were going to review, right, Josh? Is that what?
Yeah, there were just reports that the police were getting involved to get testimonies and talk to both parties in regards to the incident.
Great. Okay. Well.
Yeah, man. I mean, if an NBA player threw a basketball at me, I would probably show up the next day in a neck brace. That's just not commenting on the validity of anything that happened or anything that anyone is saying in a legal matter. But I think that's just a general rule of thumb. A lot of people out there would follow. So guessing that is what is being looked at here. I find it hard to believe that this is a real crime, but it is a super bad look. I think everyone around it acknowledges
Here's
that.
the Pat Bev question, though, Ty. Is he back next year?
I thought it was really interesting that Chris Haynes and Mark Stein kind of laughed about that idea on an episode of their podcast early this week about how this last week was really bad in that sense. I still think I would probably call it a coin flip. I mean, there's multiple things working here in both directions. One, the Bucks clearly needed the defense and energy that Pat Bev brought, and he ended up starting for that reason. But they also need to get younger, more athletic. I think that's very obvious too. And for as good of a tough defender Pat Bev is, he's not exactly jumping out of the gym at this point in his career. Obviously, he was dealing with some injuries late in the year and throughout the whole playoff run. But I think I wouldn't be shocked if they brought him back, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they tried to open up the rotation and use some of these spots on some players who are going to add a little more athleticism, be able to get to the rim a little bit more. Pat Bev's, it was really one game he could finish at the rim, one game he couldn't. That inconsistency made it hard for Milwaukee, one of many things that did. So I'm going to be cowardly and just say I think it's a legitimate coin flip at this point based on what we've heard and just my feeling on what the Bucks need. And I think Doc really likes him, and I think that obviously is going to be a factor here too.
The Bucks need some Nemhards and some Neesmiths, guys that the casual fan doesn't know about, and then you watch them play and you're like, this guy can really help us. They're young, they're spry, and they're cheap for the most part, right? Where do we get those guys, Ty?
Well, you got 2 top 33 draft selections this year, and I would imagine that I don't know if they're going to use both. I mean, I think this is a draft that it's so unpredictable. There's not a consensus top pick. I think it's a draft of a lot of guys you'd like to take at 25 and not a lot of guys you'd like to take at 5, which means it's probably a pretty good draft to have, I think, 24 and 33 or whatever the 2 picks the Bucks have. But also, I mean, I think they have some of those guys. I think Andre Jackson Jr. is one of those guys, and I think his impact on the series was pretty noticeable, had a big plus-minus. I think after the season, we had kind of speculated, is something going on with Marjon Beauchamp behind the scenes because it just seemed like he never got to play. Doc Rivers spoke on him, actually brought him up in a conversation about the young guys, saying, I think we should talk about Marjan more. The obvious answer, the rebuttal to that, maybe you should play him more. But he said he was always injured during, when the Bucks would, have actual practices, and he just didn't get to see him play. And so the assistants kind of were giving Doc the insight on these young guys. And because Andre Jackson Jr. and AJ Green had been playing, they just continued to play them. But I think those guys are going to have a real shot, not just to have, an opportunity to play, but a real rotational role. One of them could start next year. So I think you can always add more and take more swings, but I do think there's some of those guys on the roster too.
All right, Ty, how do you fix the bench? My take is you trade Bobby Portis. He's the guy that you can get. Well, no, but this is the case though, and this is why I said he's a guy that you can get some value for. Yeah. And that's the only bench player I think you can probably get some value for. Is that the right move? Should the Bucks look at that? And how do you address that bench to make it younger? Got Patsy, Bobby. Those are some of those guys that I look at that say it's probably their time.
Yeah, I think you need a more consistent scorer off that bench. I mean, again, as was talked about a lot through the season, like if you could have Malik Beasley as a bench player, it'd probably make more sense for this team. His fit as a starter between Dame and Chris Middleton was just obviously not ideal. And I think in the playoffs, him playing with both of those guys was just very difficult for the Bucks. So he's probably, I assume, gone. Who knows, though? I mean, the value probably took a hit down the stretch. Maybe you could bring him back for Vetman again. To the Bobby point, I think I prefer personally trading him over Brook Lopez. That's become kind of a hot button debate. My thought on this is I know there's a way you can play elite defense with Brook Lopez. I think even at 36 years old, right? If you get him in the drop or maybe some zone stuff, multiple things, but primarily drop, he can be a great defender. Nobody contested more shots within 6 feet of the rim. And out of the guys who did, he was like 4th out of the top 15 in volume in terms of holding players to shoot worse there versus their average. He's still an impactful defender around the rim. I don't think they've ever found that place with Bobby Portis. I think they've done different things with him. They've switched with him. They blitz with him, whatever. I think they just try to find ways to use him because he can't drop. He can't play defense as a true big. So they just have to kind of use him as a stretch 4. And I think for as much as he brings you scoring-wise, it hasn't been consistent enough. And he takes so many touches away from the guards. The way he plays, if he was a roller or if he was a DHO hub that you could get more players involved, then maybe I'd say, even if you can't defend with him, you figure it out. But he just requires so many touches. And I think it can make it difficult at times.
Okay, I need some clarification. A roller or DHO
pick and roll
hub?
So a pick and roll player or a player who, like Bam Adebayo for the Heat is an example where he
catches the ball and gives the ball up and is in a black freaking hole. Yeah.
Moves the ball, creates for others on the team, not just, let me get 10 feet away, dribble 8 times and throw up a hook shot.
A powerful force that consumes orange round objects and then just crushes them. Never to
AKA Bobby Portis. Yeah.
All right. Can we go through the first round picks since Giannis was taken by the Bucks?
Yeah, it's not going to take long.
Round. Huh? It won't take long.
It's not going to take long.
In 10 years. 8 first round picks in 10 years. And it's not a very good track record. Nope. Jabari Parker was 1/2 in 2014. And we know what happened there with the injury. Then there is Rashad Vaughn, 17th overall out of UNLV. In 2015. Thon Maker, 10th overall in 2016. DJ Wilson, 17th overall out of Michigan in 2017. DiVincenzo, now styling for the Knicks, also at 17 the following year in 2018. Then in 2019, Kevin Porter Jr., 30th overall pick. Yeah. USC kicked off the Knicks with the assault charges. Later,
that was a trade, wasn't that? That was a trade. He never even played for Milwaukee. That was.
He traded them. Yeah. Bad guy, not a good player. Then in 2020, RJ Hampton, 24.
Again, a trade. So they didn't actually. Yeah.
Okay. And then in 2022, Marjan Beauchamp. In Horst we trust. What's going on here?
Well, it's funny because I've seen people in the same tweet bash Horst for drafting DiVincenzo and then for not retaining DiVincenzo. And I feel like you can only get him for one. I feel like you can't get him for both there.
The draft wasn't really daunting. or it wasn't John.
No, I think DJ Wilson. I think that was Jason Kidd. I think he drafted DiVincenzo. I think the injuries just made it tough. DJ Wilson. I would say it was probably a Jason Kidd pick. I get why people say that. I also think their only pick going into last year's draft was 58, and they ended up being able to scrounge up a pick for basically nothing and grab Andre Jackson Jr. at 36, who now everyone loves and says should have started this season. So I think it's not a great draft record. I'm not here to blow smoke. I also think when you're picking every other year in the bottom 10, mostly in the first round, you're probably not going to come up with that many great players. I mean, you'll find good players late in the first and the second round. It happens. It's certainly not the norm. I mean, you can go through, look at the 10 guys drafted after most of these guys. For the most part, you're not looking at, there were 8 obvious picks they should have taken there. It's tough.
Which one of those number one picks, based on the timing and the cycle of the team as it was being built and the caliber of the miss, which one was the most painful to you?
I would probably say I'd go all the way back to Thon, because I think 10.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. It is.
That's the last time they had a good lottery pick.
10th I was going to say Jabari hurt.
Jabari hurts, but Thon is bad. Like
Jabari, I don't think Jabari was a miss.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you said hurt.
But I'm talking about which pick do you go woof?
Oh,
that's a bad pick. The Jabari pick was not a bad pick, right?
No.
Okay. So Thon makes 10 overall.
Domantas Sabonis went at 11.
Why did Thonmaker not work out?
He was just so raw. I didn't think this was the last John Hammond pick, and we just know. I mean, obviously, I think when you pick Giannis, maybe you're emboldened to go after a couple more of these guys, and if you get 2, then you're really cooking. But he was such a raw prospect. There were flags about his background and just basic information about him. I mean, he was about as swing for the fences, I think, as you can get. Yep. And I mean, you look at this draft again.
A 7-footer from Sudan by way of Australia.
Yeah.
Who was
7'1", 216. Yeah. And who got drafted after him was Sabonis. Now, the rest of that draft is not
great
by any means, right? But the biggest names were Sabonis, LeVert, and then probably, Siakam drafted 27. And Malik Beasley's in that draft as well, 19th to Denver. But as far as that goes, like, it wasn't a deep draft, so I understand why the Bucks did it, but it was a bad miss.
Yeah.
Well, they say this year's draft is also terrible.
Which is why having 2 picks, though, I mean, you can take 2 swings. I think this is the year they draft a big man. I think it makes a lot of sense whether you're going to move on from Lopez.
They need an athletic big. They need somebody that can protect the rim and run to the rim. That's all they need to do, but they can try to develop everything else. But I thought that was a miss last year.
Yeah, I think they've held on it just because there's just not really a role. I mean, if you draft someone 2 years ago, they're playing how many games? I mean, Brooke plays a lot. We know Bobby and Giannis play a lot at the big. But this year, like, if you're shifting that bench around a little bit, Brooke's an expiring contract after this next season. Like, you could be kind of backing up Brooke with the idea that if you come along, you could start next year. Kellel Ware from Indiana is a guy a lot of people like. There's some other bigs too. I mean,
please don't.
Well, she doesn't like him. Okay, good to know.
He's got to play all the time, man. He doesn't play all the he's really talented, but I don't think he plays all the time. I know that's a name that's question.
Dumb question. Zach Edey won't be there, will he?
I have no idea. I've seen him at 14. I've seen him at 30.
If Butchie, would you grace it? Would you give it your papal blessing?
I would, yeah.
I wouldn't. Is he slower than Brooke Lopez? I mean, I feel like that's not solving the issue.
Than the post office on a holiday Friday.
Preach.
But the reason I would is that at least you can drop him and he's going to be able to handle being coached as a young player.
I think this is a tough fit for him. I think your center doesn't need to shoot. This has been something we've talked about a lot because we believe that the old Bucks, they need to shoot. They need to shoot. Now with Dame, I don't know if they need to shoot, but they have to do something offensively besides be right at the rim. I don't know if Edey has enough.
All right, 10-second exit question. Was the Dame buy-in convincing to you on his way out the door to summer? Yes or no?
100%. Yeah, I mean, he's got plans with Giannis. He's going to be in the best shape of his life. He told Doc. He's locked in. I'm not worried about Dame. He's been saying all year, it's not Milwaukee. Okay. My personal life is hard.
I know. listen, I heard what he said. I just wanted to see it. I wanted to hear it, and I feel good. I feel better now than I did. Wanted to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ty, as always, a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for joining us this season. We'll do it again when the developments warrant, maybe around the draft.
Sounds great. Looking forward to being back and hopefully a lot of good stuff.
Yep. Ty Windisch of the Eurostep